What happens when one of the most powerful men in music, a billionaire, a cultural icon, a man who built an empire from nothing, is forced to confront a truth he spent decades running from? In one courtroom, the image of control shattered, and the world watched as Jay-Z faced the one thing money, fame, and power could never protect him from: the truth. Jay-Z isn't just a rapper. He's the blueprint of success, the man who turned street hustle into a billion-dollar empire. From chart-topping albums to business ventures spanning liquor brands, clothing lines, streaming platforms, even sports management, he's built himself into more than an artist. He's a mogul, a symbol of control, someone who seemed untouchable. And then there's his marriage to Beyoncé, the ultimate power couple, often seen as royalty in the world of entertainment. Together, they've shaped culture, dominated music, and built a brand that represents perfection, loyalty, and strength. But beneath the polished surface, there's always been a shadow. Quiet rumors whispered in forums, tabloid headlines that popped up and disappeared, fans speculating on whether Jay had a secret that money alone couldn't erase. For years, he ignored it, outmaneuvered it, buried it under headlines about billion-dollar deals and sold-out stadiums. Yet, no matter how carefully an image is built, the truth has a way of finding cracks. And in Jay-Z's case, that truth came in the form of a man who refused to disappear. Because while the world saw Jay-Z as untouchable, Rymir saw him as something else entirely. Rymir wasn't a celebrity. He didn't have millions of followers, flashy cars, or industry connections. He was just a man with a name, a story, and one question that never went away: where do I come from? For more than a decade, he's been saying the same thing, that Jay-Z is his father. And for more than a decade, no one seemed to listen. The courts dismissed him, the press overlooked him, and Jay himself stayed silent. Most people brush Rymir off as just another clout chaser, another person trying to attach his name to fame, for money, or headlines. But that's the thing, he never asked for money, not once. What he wanted was something much simpler, something money couldn't buy: the truth, a DNA test. Just one answer to settle a lifetime of questions. Imagine carrying that weight for years, telling your story over and over, only to be ignored, doubted, or laughed at. Imagine your life being reduced to a rumor, while the person who could confirm it all with a single test lived like a king, untouchable, beyond reach. That's the life Rymir lived. And yet, he didn't stop. He kept fighting, through lawyers, through filings, through rejection after rejection, because for him, this wasn't about headlines or a payout. It was about identity, about finally knowing who he was. And the more he pushed, the more the world began to realize maybe there was something to his story after all. Behind every claim, there's a beginning. And for Rymir, that beginning was his mother, Wanda. She was the first to speak his truth, the first to insist that Jay-Z was his father. From the time Rymir was a child, Wanda never wavered. Year after year, she repeated the same story, holding firm even when the world dismissed her. But instead of being heard, she was ridiculed. To outsiders, she was painted as just another woman with a claim, someone looking to bring down a powerful man. Courts didn't take her seriously. The media barely gave her space. And Jay-Z? He remained silent. Yet Wanda carried the weight anyway. She raised her son with the belief that his story mattered, even if no one believed them. She stood by her truth until her final days, never backing down, never changing her words. And that's where the tragedy deepens. Wanda passed away before she could see the truth confirmed. She never sat in that courtroom, never heard the judge read the results aloud, never watched the world finally acknowledge what she had been saying all along. For Rymir, that loss cuts deep. Because while the DNA test might have given him proof, it came too late for the one person who fought hardest for him. His mother was right the whole time, but she never lived to see her fight vindicated. And that lingering injustice only made the moment of truth in the courtroom even heavier. The day finally came when years of whispers, filings, and denials could no longer be pushed aside. The case landed in court. The atmosphere was electric, the kind of tension that feels almost unbearable. Reporters lined the benches, cameras locked in, every eye waiting for the moment that could redefine the legacy of one of the most powerful men in music. At the center of it all sat Jay-Z, a man who had stared down competitors, negotiated billion-dollar deals, and outlasted countless controversies. But here, in this sterile courtroom, he didn't look untouchable. He looked cornered. Across from him sat Ramir. No entourage, no cameras on his side, just calm, steady stillness. He wasn't there for drama or theatrics. He was there for truth. And then came the moment. The judge opened the folder, glanced at the page, and read aloud the words that silenced the room. The DNA matched. For a split second, time froze. Then it shattered. Jay's composure, the one thing he was known for, broke. His jaw tightened, his fists hit the table, his voice cracked into something raw and unfiltered. It wasn't the image of a mogul. It wasn't the mask of a billionaire. It was a man whose carefully constructed walls had just collapsed. Meanwhile, Ramir didn't move. No celebration, no smirk, no gloating. Just a quiet, haunted stare. The look of someone who had carried a question his entire life, only to have the answer come too late to fix the damage it had already done. Because in that moment, it wasn't about victory. It was about loss. Loss of years, of trust, of a father who could have been there, but wasn't. And as Jay-Z sat broken before the world, the story was no longer his to control. It belonged to the truth. And the truth was finally undeniable. The verdict didn't stay in the courtroom for long. Within minutes, headlines exploded, timelines lit up, and social media turned the private moment into a global spectacle. Hashtags trended worldwide, clips of Jay-Z's breakdown replayed endlessly, and the internet did what it always does. It turned the rawest moment of someone's life into entertainment. Some rushed to defend Jay, insisting he had simply been protecting his family and his empire from what they believed was an unproven claim. Others dragged him relentlessly, calling him out for denying his son for so long, questioning how a man so powerful could be so afraid of a truth that required nothing more than honesty. But this wasn't just celebrity gossip anymore. It was bigger. It was cultural. Millions of people saw themselves in Ramir, the ignored, the fatherless, the ones who carried unanswered questions. And millions saw themselves in Jay, the one who avoided responsibility until it crashed through the door. Influencers, podcasts, and endless Twitter threads dissected every angle. Some framed it as a cautionary tale about fame and denial, others as a broader conversation about accountability. What everyone agreed on was this: the truth had landed and it was impossible to bury again. For Jay-Z, the mogul image cracked in real time. For Ramir, the story shifted from whispers and speculation to vindication. And for the world, it became a mirror, reflecting the pain, the silence, and the complexity of family truths long ignored. But as the world reacted, one silence spoke louder than all the noise. Through all the chaos, one voice remained absent: Beyoncé's. No statements, no interviews, no carefully crafted PR moves. The Carters, usually so precise with their image, stayed silent. That silence only fueled speculation. What did Beyoncé think? What did this mean for their marriage, their brand, their carefully built empire of perfection? In the absence of answers, the public filled the void with theories. Some said she was standing by him in private. Others whispered that this revelation could shake even the strongest foundations. But beyond the rumors, the silence was strategic and dangerous. Because sometimes not saying anything says everything. For years, the Carters had been more than entertainers. They had been cultural royalty, a symbol of unity and power. Now the image was under siege, and the quiet response only made the story grow louder. And while the internet debated, one thing became clear: the fallout wasn't just personal, it was global. Deals, endorsements, partnerships, reputation. Everything Jay-Z and Beyoncé had built was now under a microscope. Because when the truth finally broke through, it didn't just shake a family, it rattled an empire. For Jay-Z, the DNA results weren't just a headline. They were a fracture in the image he spent decades building. His brand, his reputation, his myth of control, all of it was now tangled in a story he couldn't manage with lawyers or money. He had faced rappers, CEOs, politicians, and critics, but nothing hit harder than this. A truth he could no longer run from. For Rymir, the verdict wasn't the victory people imagined. Yes, the truth was out. Yes, the years of doubt were finally erased, but the confirmation didn't bring back the father he never had. It didn't erase the birthdays, the milestones, and the silence he endured growing up. The court gave him truth, but it didn't give him time. And time was the one thing he had wanted most. The real cost wasn't measured in reputation or money. It was measured in absences, in the moments that could never be reclaimed. For Jay, it was realizing he had missed the entire journey of his son becoming a man. For Rymir, it was realizing that knowing the truth didn't heal the emptiness left behind, because in the end, DNA doesn't create a relationship. It only confirms what was denied. As Jay-Z walked out of the courthouse, surrounded by flashing cameras and shouting reporters, he carried something heavier than any lawsuit or scandal. He carried the truth. And no matter how many billions he earned, no matter how carefully his empire was built, that truth couldn't be polished away. The world saw the mogul break. The internet had its headlines. But beyond the noise, there were just two men. One who had spent his life chasing the truth, and one who had spent his life avoiding it. And while the judge confirmed what Wanda had always said, the real verdict was far more complicated. Fame can shield you, money can protect you, power can silence people for years. But none of it can stop the truth from eventually catching up. At the end of it all, the question isn't whether Jay-Z is Rymir's father. That part is settled. The real question, the one that lingers long after the courtroom lights fade, is whether either of them can ever reclaim what was lost. Because the truth can't turn back time. It can only leave you to face the silence that follows.